Good evening, folks, family, friends, loved ones, enemies, frenemies, wizards, witches, muggles, mudbloods, to another episode of the Cover One Film Room, part of the Cover One Network. Now, if you're normal, regular viewers here to the film room, you might be like, wait a minute, Erik's here. Why is Anthony doing this intro? I'm confused. What's happening? It's because we switched up the formula a little bit. You get a little peek behind the fourth wall. Erik does a lot of the Wizard of Oz stuff behind the scenes for the film room. So he's queuing up clips. He's queuing up a whole bunch of stuff and exactly pulling those puppet strings, making the puppets dance. So there's a lot on his plate. So I host things all the time. So we kicked it to me for some of those responsibilities. So you're going to get a little bit of a formulaic change here on the film room, but the content, the analysis, the breakdowns, all that stuff will be the same level of quality that you've come to expect. So Erik, now that you get to play a little more behind the scenes, how you feeling coming into this film room? You good? How's life?
Good. I mean, we're going to be breaking down running backs. And as a former running back, I mean, of course I'm excited. And, we have several targets for the Bills, guys that fit their archetypes, guys that we want to see, in the Bills offense, whether it's just as a pass catching type running back, maybe a do it all type guy. We're going to explore, running backs for different rounds. So it's going to be a fun episode. I'm excited and appreciate you hosting. And Kendall, welcome back into the film room as well, brother.
Oh, of course. No, I'm happy we could actually hold off on the running back stuff because there were thoughts about it happening while you were in Disney.
I was going to tell the story. Yeah.
I was like, I know Erik's going to be real giddy to do running backs because he played the position. So I feel like we should hold off. So it worked perfectly. I feel like it's going to get some burn because, it's a hot topic right now on Bill's Twitter. Everyone wants to talk about the running backs. Who should go, when they should go, if we should wait, if we should go up and get the guy to be a featured guy, whatever the conversation is. I feel like we are putting ourselves right in the middle of it, and it's really good timing.
Yeah, that's it's funny that you mentioned that, Kendall. I was gonna tell that too. Like Erik, when you were gone for those couple of weeks, we were bouncing ideas back and forth for episodes, and we were talking about different position groups to break down. And immediately it was like, well, we can't do running backs because Erik's a former running back, and he's gonna want to be there for running backs.
Can't do it. Oh, you guys are thinking of me.
Can't do it. But yeah, there's a lot to Kendall, as you alluded to, and Erik, you mentioned it as well. Like the conversation has been struck up again, similar to where it was last year at this time in regards to Travis Etienne and even Najee Harris. And it was like, okay, the Bills could target a running back in round one, and there's guys that are available. And that's where the idea for this really came, the position of running back and what it could mean to this offense and the prospects coming into this draft and what it all means in the bigger picture, grand scheme of things. And Kendall, I want to get your thoughts because, you mentioned this directly. Part of what's caused this stir, I guess, in Bills Mafia recently has been people mocking different running backs to the Bills, the talk of, Breece Hall in particular being on the board for the Bills in the first round. There's been several prominent mock drafters who have, given Breece Hall to the Bills in that first round. What's your thoughts? We'll kick it off to you here on the potential of the Bills going running back in round one, whether it's Breece, whether it's someone else, but, because it has everybody in a stir given the perceived value of running back and also combined with what this team needs. So where's your head when it comes to that?
So personally, my head is that I would prefer not to. I would prefer to use that first round pick on a cornerback, especially given, the lack of any sort of influx of value into that position during free agency. So I'd like to see that in the first round, but I also acknowledge, everyone worth a value at pick 25 could be off the board. And there is a conversation to be had at running back at 25. And furthermore, I mean, we heard whether it was smoke or there was fire, whatever it was, last year there was talk about it being a thing at, I don't even remember the draft pick now, in the first round for the Bills last year with
100%.
Even Harris. So whether it was real or not, there was talk about it, and Bean even talked about how he'd be willing to do that. So I'm not going to say it's impossible. It's never going to happen. But personally, I haven't put a first round grade on any of these guys. I liked Najee Harris and Etienne better than the top three of this class. But if it happens, it's always going to depend on opportunity cost. It's always going to depend on who's on the board at pick 25. If they were to go Breece Hall, like I wouldn't have a fit about it, but I would have a fit about it if like Andrew Booth was still available.
Yeah.
That's where it's like, okay, I'm really concerned about the direction, but there's always the conversation to be had. what is this offense when you add a dynamic 3-down featured back? So you can't just discount all of that conversation just because of round 1 running back value and all of that. So it's important to talk on all sides of this because it is a very interesting conversation when it comes to running back and where they should be valued in the draft.
Very
Yeah.
much so. Yeah, go ahead.
No, it's obviously, I don't know, the last few years it's, a conversation that pops up in Bill's Twitter, and I know it's the running backs don't matter discussion, but when you think about where the Bills are drafting right now, and when you think about where the roster is right now, taking a running back at the back end of the first round, I don't think is the worst thing, because as Kendall said, adding a dynamic type back to the offense would be a scary sight, honestly, for opposing defensive coordinators. And then the way you got to think about it, too, when it comes to the draft, typically you have a first round grade on 17 to maybe 25 prospects. So once you get to where the Bills are picking now and where they were picking last year, like, I can understand why a team, especially with a solid roster and a guy on the board that can do it all, is staring them in the face when they're on the clock. I could see why they would consider it. And so I think, it'd be a great, position augmentation, adding that dynamic to the Bills offense would really open up things when those defenses want to play those too high shells. Well, guess what? Maybe, we are hoping that they can add more to the screen game, but even if they don't, adding a running back that can take it to the house against those too high shells, that has the breakaway speed to blow up angles of those safeties coming from depth, that would be a defensive coordinator's nightmare. So I don't have a strong line in the sand when it comes to drafting a running back in the first round. I have a first round grade on one of the running backs we're going to talk about tonight.
Ooh.
So I would be totally okay with them taking one late in the first round.
And, Erik, to that point, so would Brandon Bean. And then Erik in the comments, I'm going to pull up your super chat in a quick minute. But Brandon Bean last year, after the draft, his exact quote was, "At the end of the day, there are guys that are worthy of the first round. I don't believe in the quote unquote, you don't ever take a running back in the first round." So Brandon Bean is not in that camp, as it seems to be a lot of Bills Mafia is now, where it's like, no running back in the first round. Draw, Erik, as you said, draw that hard line in the sand. Never take a running back in round 1. It all comes down to that value. It all comes down to the grade. And I think the big thing that's lost in this is that's something that Brandon Bean might consider. Like, he's not one of those guys that says running back is not worthy of a first round pick based on the quote and what he said after the draft last year. And Erik, I'm going to kick it to you, because this is the conversation we've had a lot. And also the person who commented, his name is Erik, and it's spelled with a K, just like yours. So I feel like it's
my dog, Erik. Yeah.
So appreciate you, Erik, in the chat for your donation and the super chat and for being here live with us. So thank you very much. And his comment is, no running back in the first round. That 5th-year option should be used on a premium position. Still plenty of options at 25. Erik, this is something that Erik Turner, I should say, this is something that, we're going to talk about a bit in this episode, but the idea of some of these guys, if you take them towards the top, like a Breece Hall or like a Kenneth Walker, but we'll stick with Breece because you have a first round grade on him. He's that someone who would get a 5th-year option if you take him in the first round. Do you think running back is worthy in terms of being quote unquote a premium position that you would want to give a pick to in the first round to have that 5th-year option?
Yeah, I do. Again, because if they can do it all, if they're a weapon like Breece Hall is, absolutely. And again, the roster right now is constructed a certain way, and Bean is managing those contracts in a certain way. When you get 5 years down the road, I mean, honestly, at this point, I don't care. You worry about winning a championship these next few years when he is on that lower end contract. Worry about the 5th year down the road. And the second contract, I'm in the boat of, hey, second year contracts for running backs. Yeah, I usually would stay away from those. So, and we're talking about, I totally get this argument from Erik, and it's a valid argument. But where the Bills are right now, and in the next 3 years, adding Von Miller to the number 1 defense, and where they are with their wide receiver positions and the offense overall, and again, the roster from top down, I think you can easily make the argument adding a dynamic weapon at running back will pay off in the long run. At least for the next 3 to 4 years. 5th-year option, I'm not worried about that right now.
And that also goes hand in hand with, I mentioned that comment from Bean, but there's also a quote that we've got from Sean McDermott in regards to how this offense wants to, quote unquote evolve. And, Erik, I know you pulled this quote, so feel free, read it, and let us know what Coach McDermott's thoughts are in regards to that.
Yeah, so recently head coach McDermott had mentioned that, we're always trying to evolve on the field, off the field schematically. And in this case, with Josh's running or the amount of times that we run him, we have to continue to evolve that way and making sure we're doing right by him by doing right by our team. So we are going to keep a close eye on that. But the one thing we will never take from Josh is his competitive nature and spirit. So he's going to do it when he's going to do it. And I think that's important just because, again, yes, they have Motor Singletary, they have Zach Moss, they have Duke Johnson, and who knows what they do in the draft. But Josh, the reason the run game turned around late last year was the commitment to it, philosophically, running it more. Ryan Bates actually did make a difference, I think. But when you look at it from the top down, the numbers were very similar. When you look at the splits before Bates, was inserted in the lineup, they're very similar. But the only thing that really changed was the commitment to the run game. So with that said, if they can add, again, a dynamic running back that will allow Josh Allen to not have to run as often on design runs, which we all know Brian Dable loved doing that, especially in those critical moments, which I'm not saying stop doing it, but you do have to scale it back a little more now that you have that franchise quarterback. Save it for specific moments. A lot of people, the first half of the season last year, were saying they need to run Josh Allen more. It's like, hold on. We're going to need that. Tail end of the season, 10, 12 carries a game, between scrambles and design runs. So I think McDermott is really echoing what they had said at the beginning of the offseason, guys. There's a slight rebranding happening on this team, and I think it's more geared on the offense with some of the moves they've made. And again, at that wide receiver position, at the coaching positions with Dorsey, Cromer, Joe Brady. So I think some of that rebranding is happening. And I think, again, adding a dynamic running back could be a part of that. Where they take him, I don't know, but I think it's worth the discussion.
That's a huge part of the discussion, right? Like the coaching piece, which is something that we talked about when we did this film room when Coach Cromer was hired. And we talked about the potential ideas, again, before everyone else, not to pat ourselves on the back, but the potential change in going towards more 12 personnel or potential, more zone running from the offense instead of more gap like we saw it on the back end. And either way, the Josh Allen running piece is going to come into it so much. But a lot of it's going to be dictated by what Ken Dorsey wants, what Coach Cromer wants, their tandem offense together and what they do and what they set up. But Erik, you bring up a good point, and Kendall, I want to ask you about this as well. The Josh Allen running piece, like when it works, it seems regardless of when it works or if it works, it seems like everyone's always like happy with it. But there's so many people that are always just like kind of holding their breath, whether it's a design run or a scramble. I think the scrambles, people see that more as like, okay, Josh is going to make a play. Awesome for Josh. Good job. But when the design runs happen, those QB powers, those pin and pull runs that are leading Josh around the corner, people seem to have a problem with those. Where do you stand as far as the Josh Allen design run game? Do you want it to be a regular focal point week after week, or do you think it's something more that needs to be specialized based on opponent or situation?
I think it's not necessarily based on opponent, but more like situation inside of each game. It should always be something that's in the back pocket for the play caller every single game. He's a weapon, and using him as that weapon is good for the offense. Now, longevity-wise, I don't know if it's the great thing for the franchise to just keep doing it and running him into 250-pound linebackers. That being said, you don't want to take that away from him, because I think it was like the Falcons game. He got his bell rung and he hopped up immediately and was like visibly energized by getting hit that hard. He's just built different in that way. You want him to play a physical brand of football, and you want him to be able to do that. But at the same time, there's the longevity argument. There's the argument that, these mobile quarterbacks haven't made it past like year 5, year 7, being like successful for a long period of time. So you want to make sure you save that for the right situations, like you mentioned, the right situations in each game. It doesn't necessarily have to come out every single game if you don't need it. But if you need it and he's a weapon and it's in a good spot to use it, go for it. But by getting a running back who can get those tough yards in tough situations, it alleviates some of that pressure and some of that stress from Josh Allen's shoulders, not only in the QB run game, but also just overall. Because let's be honest, 85% of this offense runs through Josh Allen.
Yes.
Getting a featured three down running back could take a lot of pressure off of him. And in those moments where, the OC's like, Josh, just turn it on, man. He can go do that still. It's not like you take that away from him just by getting a running back. You just give your team some options.
Right. And real quick, Anthony, you talked about the 12 personnel thing. Okay. If you only have 2 wide receivers on the field, you have 2 tight ends on the field, and then a running back. Well, guess what? If that guy is Motor Singletary or Zach Moss or Duke Johnson, okay, they're serviceable. Maybe their ceiling is above average or below. Maybe they vary between, average and above average. But again, if you add that dynamic weapon and you're running those check downs, those dump downs, and they can take that 3-yard dump down to the house, I mean, that's just a different dynamic to this offense that they don't have. And again, you're going to want that weapon when you're adding one more tight end onto the field in those 12 personnel groupings.
Yeah, it changes the tendency that the defense is going to see. It changes the schematic adjustment from the defense. And again, exactly your point. You're kind of, no disrespect to whoever the second tight end is, especially if it's OJ Howard, but you're kind of almost removing more of a pure weapon and adding more of like a run blocker and weapon, like dual threat functionality. And it's a bit different in that regard. And what also from what you're going to see from the defensive side, right? Like we saw what the Bills did with 12 personnel last year, where especially that Jets game, right, where they went more 12 in order to bring one of those safeties down and get more single high looks. And then also, Erik, as you have mentioned in the notes, teams are going to have to try and counter that, and you might see more 3 linebacker looks. And it's a fantastic thing is to get a receiving threat running back in one-on-one opportunities against linebackers. And that's something, no disrespect to Devin Singletary and Zach Moss and Duke Johnson, but if you have again, no disrespect to them, but if you have a more top-level athlete at running back or a more of a dynamic dual-threat player at running back, they can take advantage of that matchup. And you've already got an offense led by Kendall, as you mentioned. 85% of this offense roughly goes through Josh Allen, who's a walking mismatch, whether it's with his arm or his legs or his strength or his agility. Now you add another Swiss Army knife piece to that offense. It creates these mismatch potentials and opportunities that this team doesn't currently have. And speaking with that, like currently what the Bills have at the running back position, if we want to just look at it and take, if we take a look at the contracts of these running backs and who's currently on the roster, we're sitting here looking at a group that is led by Devin Singletary, Zach Moss, Duke Johnson, Christian Wade, and Tywan Jones. Devin Singletary is a free agent in 2023. Zach Moss will be a free agent in 2024. Duke Johnson's here on a 1-year deal. There's very much not only for like the argument of taking a running back early and being better for quote unquote 2022, but there's also the thought process of taking a running back early because the future of this group is so undecided. Like, do you give Devin Singletary a second contract? Is he worthy of that? Is he your running back of the future? Erik, starting with you on this, does that kind of give you more of an impetus to try and take a running back early because it's not even just about 2022. It's about what does this group and this offense look like going forward, because there's no clear answer at running back really for the future of this team.
Yeah, and we talked about how, yes, Singletary came on late last year and he was efficient and just fine, right? He was just fine. But, I swear Bean drafts like athletic freaks at so many positions except
but running back.
And so it would be nice to get a freak there and not have to worry about it for a few years. And, as Singletary's contract runs up, I'm not giving him a second contract. He's a dime a dozen. Same with Zach Moss. I mean, Zach Moss, who knows where he's going to end up this year altogether. He needs a big bounce back year as we look at some of the contracts now to even be considered for the 53-man roster, because he just was non-existent last year. So, again, get a freak in there that can do it all. And if you guys remember, I think it was Bean a couple years ago, right before the draft, talking about when he left Carolina right after drafting Christian McCaffrey and how he wished he would have brought him, could bring him to Buffalo. There were rumors and rumor tied to the Bills and Christian McCaffrey the last couple of years. But I mean, getting a guy like that, again, just would solidify the position for several years and rebrand the offense in a way that I believe Sean McDermott wants to, now that he has kind of, Dable in New York and he's got a young offensive coordinator. draft guys that can make this new coordinator's job easy. Make it easier on the offense, make it easier on the coordinator, get some freaks on offense. And I think that's what they are going to do in this draft and lean more towards offense.
Kendall, how much of that, the future piece, is in your head when it comes to looking at running backs for the Bills? Are you focused more on 2022, or are you focused on the future? And if you're focused on the future, how much so? Like, are you looking for a guy who can be a true lead back for the next 4 years, or are you looking for more of like a stopgap and continue to piece it together year by year when it comes to this grouping?
I'd say it's more future based. It's probably like 75-25, 25% being allocated to 2022, because you still, obviously, Motor's on the team for this year. So you still need to find someone that complements him and who's a change of pace to him, or rather Motor's a change of pace to whoever's drafted. Either way, I think you still need to work in 2022, but I agree. I mean, what we have in Devin Singletary and Zach Moss, like they do their job. Like, they're good stopgap options. Like, they can do what they're asked to do, but can they go the extra step? Will they go the extra step to be dynamic and force defensive coordinators to game plan for them? Because I think that's really what we're all looking for when we're talking about evolving this offense. Because you think about the next step, and it's like, when defensive coordinators have to game plan for the Bills, they're game planning for Josh Allen in the passing attack. And then they're like, all right, just know they're probably going to run the ball a little bit to keep us honest, but don't worry about who's back there. Just know that they're going to do it. And think about what it's going to change when you add someone back there to that game plan. It's like, oh, they're not going to just sit. Yeah, they're probably going to run to keep us honest. They're going to run to keep us honest, but it's also going to be dangerous. We need to account for the special skill set that this dude has back there. So it's definitely towards the future more, but you still want to find a guy that complements Singletary this year.
That's such a huge piece with all of it. As we start to transition in this episode, you've got Josh Allen, who, just some real quick stats. Devin Singletary had 870 rushing yards last year, which was 16th in the league. Josh Allen had 763, which was 25th. He's an effective weapon back there. We know how much the Bills like to run RPOs. If you're all of a sudden having a dynamic guy in the backfield, a better runner or a speed threat or a tradesy skill set guy to put in the backfield that defenses have to honor in the run game, it's a tremendous added weapon. But also in the pass game, that ability, Erik, like you mentioned, if you're coming up with more 12 personnel and defenses are trying to go heavy, to have that mismatch underneath in addition to what the running back can do with the ball in his hands. And that's where we lead into the first prospect of this episode, Mr. Breece Hall, who has been the subject of a lot of discussion recently amongst Bills Mafia, Erik. But Breece is that guy who has that dynamic skill set in a variety of ways, and he's that running back who you take early, who takes over RB1 for this year and the future. And he's got that dynamic skill set that could really open some things for this offense.
Yeah, and you're going to see it in this compilation. His size and speed, 5'11", 217, 4'3", 940. When you look at the statistics, I didn't even list them all because he's top 5 to 7 in every single one, rushing and receiving. His receiving skills set him apart, I think, from most of the running backs, especially when you're talking those first and second tier running backs. Some of the, descriptions I use on him: dynamic, slippery. He's able to stack moves. So what I'm saying there, you'll see it when we break it down. He'll make a jump cut, can stack, he can stack a spin move right afterwards, and then a jump cut again. Like, he can do that. There's been a lot of comps for him. If I had to use one, his running style is more of like that Le'Veon Bell type style, where very patient, kind of the like slow landmark type runner, pressing the line of scrimmage, kind of skips to get to his landmark so that he can survey the field, which I think in some schemes that's probably a negative, because a lot of teams that run zone, like kind of like this play right here, they want their guys running at 80% towards their landmarks, not really skipping to their aiming points. But he slithers through traffic and trash. I think his processing and ability to see different run blitzes, run stunts, allow him to cut through the line of scrimmage and then, again, take it to the house. When he does hit contact, he keeps those legs churning. I think he really does it all. And we're going to see some of his receiving skills in some of this film, but he has a first-round grade from me. And again, first-round grade, that back half of the first round is Generally, it can have guys in that second round grade range, but he's a solid first round grade for me. Just a dynamic guy that I would love to see in the Bills offense, as you said, to change the numbers game. You can't play too high looks against a running back like this. Do you think that a defense is willing to risk playing a 6-man box against Breece Hall versus a Devin Singletary? I mean, that's what defenses were doing. They were inviting the run for the Bills all of last year. 6-man boxes, 2 high looks. They wouldn't be able to do that, Breece Hall, and some of the other running backs that we're talking about. So it would be a nice addition to the Bills offense.
And that's really well said, Erik. Like the idea of taking a running back early or upgrading this running back room is with the idea of changing those numbers in the box and making defenses pay for going light in terms of weight or light in terms of number, and having that threat, that piece that teams need to account for. And Breece, you hit on everything with what Breece does really well. And I wanted to highlight some of, his scheme in terms of what he does. And with the idea of the Bills potentially going to a zone running team, Breece fits in perfectly with that. For his career, he's got 528 zone carries. He does have 183 gap, but he is a predominantly zone runner. And like you mentioned, he knows how to press that line. He knows how to get the one cut and get north and south. I know he's got the Le'Veon Bell skips, but part of me likes that. And then he's got the vision. He's got the size. He's got the burst. I do have some questions with some of his contact balance at times and how he gets brought down, but then he just makes moves in the hole and is so agile and is so fluid with his movements that it kind of balances things out and maybe even tips the scales in his favor. And either way, he's that kind of running back that you have to account for coming out of the backfield as a runner, but also as a receiver. He's got a career 82 receptions for 743 yards. He can function in designed passes and routes. He can function out of the backfield, and that check down piece is so huge. Kendall, I know that's something you like about Breece and something that you and I have talked about on Disguised Coverage and in the film room, looking for that running back who can come out of the backfield and transition from runner to receiver and receiver to runner and be a threat when he gets the ball in those opportunities.
Yeah, that's a huge part of it. I mean, just being that check down option, that quick check down option when Josh doesn't feel like he loves everything he's seeing downfield, and he can, in a split second, just dump it off to his guy as those linebackers or, that second level of the defense is dropping into their spot. You can get a lot of easy yards that way. But if he transitions back into a runner from that pass catcher quickly, he offers himself the ability to get even more yards after the catch. And when you see the dynamic moves that he can chain together, like Erik was saying, I mean, the concerns I have about his contact balance are very similar with you, Ant. But when you offer this kind of elusiveness and you make it so difficult for defenders to truly square you up, it kind of mitigates that lack thereof of contact balance, if you even want to say that, because it's not like it's below average or it's inadequate or anything like that. But if you had to pigeonhole a part of his game, like that may be one of those things that, yeah, he could improve upon, but does it matter if he's not getting squared up all that much? Like, look at the way he's making all these defenders miss, and then he's keeping his own balance through that. So that's the thing. It's like, yes, it might be a concern, but if he's not getting squared up enough to even show that weakness, does that weakness show itself enough to be truly concerned?
Oh, that's a very good point. And Erik, to circle back to you, you've got a first round grade on him. And I know so many people have talked about recent running backs that have come out and have been taken towards the top with the Jonathan Taylors and the Najee Harris, and ETN got hurt, so he doesn't really count. But, not a lot gets talked about what you think they need to work on. It's all positives and skill sets and things like that. But if there was an area you think Breece would need to work on, or an area that concerns you a little bit, aside from the flashiness and the strengths and all that, what's one area that you would point to for him?
Well, I mean, you guys mentioned some of the contact balance stuff, and I want to frame that a little better. And I think there are some of those longer runs that he gets tripped up late in those runs. And that's why I think a lot of people, associate to his contact balance. Some of the things I talked about, kind of like the Le'Veon Bell type runs, he is, a little slow to the line of scrimmage. So he spends a lot of time behind the line of scrimmage. And that can lead to, on some of those run stunts and stuff like that, can lead to a couple, tackles for loss or get the offense behind the chains there. I think that's one of the major ones. And then, finally, it's, his late reads in pass pro. There are some times where he's catching rushers late, where he'll be scanning Mike DeWill. he'll look at the will, and the will drop in the coverage. He's late to get back to the mic. Just things like that. And then the physicality in pass blocking, I think that kind of suffers as well. But all things that, again, we're nitpicking. I mean, that's the type of player this guy is. And, if we're looking at some of these runs, guys, I said he's got Le'Veon Bell to him, but he's also got some of that shady to him. Like, look at this move on the linebacker here in the hole. Again, I had just talked about how he will take some of these for losses, but he will also take some of these stalemates and tackles for losses when the plays aren't blocked up well by the offensive line and turn them into positive. Look at him smoke number 13 right there. Then he has a defensive tackle in his face, makes him miss. And so he gets through the line of scrimmage. And of course, now he's looking to the second level and he's able to run away from that guy. Here comes 2 right at him, and he's going to make those guys miss. Like, he's just so silky smooth. I kind of equate his game to like an and one mixtape. Like, every run with him appears to be like an and one mixtape where he's crossing dudes up and taking them to the house like this. Like, he's just so filthy and fun to watch. And I just want to see him behind Josh Allen, to be honest. That's it. First round grade, I want to see him behind Josh Allen, in support of Josh Allen, making these type of moves, behind the Bills offensive line, and just, adding a different level to the Bills offense.
That last sentence there, the adding the different level for Breece, for me, and for Kenneth Walker, who we're going to speak about in a minute, that's what you're looking for when you invest at that running back position early. And some people might think, again, it's not a premium position, or you don't want to take him in the first and value and all that stuff. But Breece Hall is the type of quality back that when you're wrong on offense, he can make you right. And when you're right on defense, he can make you wrong. And schematically, all these types of things that we love to talk about here. We love to talk about the whys and the hows behind things. We like to talk about the X's and O's and how to make things work. Sometimes it's as simple as, that dude is just better than that dude, and he won you a rep because he's better than that guy. The Bills have not had that piece in the running back room at all in Josh Allen's tenure. And if you add another layer to that with that running back, Erik, you just wrote down the comment for us now in our private chat, little peek behind the scenes there. He plays above the scheme. And what that means is you can win in a variety of ways in football, but you can win with talent and you can win with scheme. Winning with scheme is you're designing, you're creating, and okay, we're creating this play to create this opening and take advantage of this position, and this is what we're doing. Winning with talent, it just beats the scheme. My guy's bigger or faster or stronger or better or whatever. Breece Hall has that in him. And that's something that you cannot quantify. And it's something you cannot quantify even further, Erik, to your point, when you're adding it to an offense that's led by Josh Allen, when you're adding it to an offense that has a Stephon Diggs, that has an emerging Gabriel Davis, that has an emerging Dawson Knox, that has an offensive line that's developed some consistency and now has one of the best offensive line coaches in all of football, you have this matchup problem and a plus matchup if you invest early with someone like Breece Hall, and his skill set really, really, really just fits in. And Erik, I know you put that comment in about plays above scheme. Is there anything else you wanted to mention on that, really to shine some light on your first round boy here?
Yeah, I mean, again, plays above the scheme and then just makes guys look silly in his ability to stack moves. So look at this. So he makes the cutback. His first read is this guy right here, 95. And he's forced to cut back here because that penetration and that guy's helmet and eyes are in the hole. So he cuts it back, and now he's got his eyes on this defender right here, the Texas Longhorns defender. And so he makes that guy miss with a hard, sharp cut up the field. And look how he's able to gain ground vertically past that guy, cover the ball. But now look at his eyes. He's on to the next threat, right, guys? On to the next threat. This guy's, coming down on him, and he's going to spin. And
this one's ridiculous.
It's just great because so you see that defender grab at the ball, and running backs are taught if guys are grabbing at the ball, just spin with it. Because as you spin naturally with it, you don't fight it. That guy's going to slip off. So he spins right there. But again, he also is doing that because this defender is coming at him. So just ridiculous processing here. But it's not done there. So he spins and he's squared up by number one. He's squared up, dead to rights right there.
Over.
But this is Breece Hall. Watch this jump cut and look at the distance he covers from right to left on your screen behind this offensive lineman right here blocking for him. Watch the distance he covers on this jump cut. Boom, out the back door, up the field, moves the chains, first down. that type of ability is why you draft a guy in the first round, can play above the scheme, can be schemed for in the run and pass game. And then Kendall, I mean, talk about his receiving abilities on this play.
Yeah, I mean, obviously this play is nutty. I mean, like this, it wasn't like every play you're seeing him making one-handed grabs like this, but when you see something like this, you have to, open your eyes a little bit to what he can be in the passing game. And he was really good in this Oklahoma game. He showed a really great job to improvise with his quarterback, and that was something I really liked about him as a receiving back. I mean, I feel like people have kind of slept on this about Breece Hall, but it's really one of his greatest strengths. He is a great receiver, maybe one of the best in this class. But yeah, this catch is really crazy. He's got great soft hands, but that ability to find those openings in improvisational situations, it's so perfect for Josh Allen. And that cannot be understated. Like, you can see him making nice sharp cuts here. Not the purest route runner in the world, but I mean, who is at the running back position coming out of college? He'll have time to work on that, but it's more about what he can do after the catch and the fact that he's so confident making the catch. That's a huge plus. And then obviously the scramble drill bit is just a huge part when it comes to Josh Allen. We know how big that is in the Bills offense, how much everyone has to be fine-tuned to that and what they're seeing from their quarterback, how to move and flow with Josh Allen to make and optimize those passing windows for the quarterback. So definitely a great part about Breece Hall's game, that passing game impact that I feel like it just doesn't get its shine.
No, and it's because a lot of his other positive attributes overshadow that. And I wanted to perfect. We brought the comment there. First of all, thank you, Whitetown's King, for your super chat donation. We got a little fire on this one. Whitetown's King says, stop disrespecting Singletary. He is enough for what we do. Cornerback speed lost us the Chiefs game, not the running back position. I feel like both of those things can exist independent of the other. Regardless of what lost us the Chiefs game, I think that has nothing to do with the running back position. I think Devin Singletary was adequate. And I think, Whitetown's King, you said it in this, like, he is enough, quote unquote, for what we do. But it's not about just being enough. It's about taking that to the next level. You could get a couple receivers that are enough for what we do, or a couple offensive linemen, or even a quarterback. It's about elevating to that next level. It's about taking things from a schematic point of view or even a talent point of view and elevating them further. You don't want a team that's just enough. You want to add someone that elevates that position grouping, that elevates that side of the ball, but more importantly, makes defenses, if we're talking about offense here, makes defenses have to account for that. Devin Singletary is enough in the sense of he can get the job done. He performs adequately, but no disrespect to Devin Singletary. Defenses are not coming in week after week and being like, okay, we have to stop 26. How do we stop Devin Singletary this week? And if you add somebody that they have to think about, one, it's taken time off of Josh Allen in terms of the prep that defense can do. You elevate everything, whether it's Allen, whether it's the passing offense, the running game. I don't know if anybody else wants to speak to that. Regardless of what lost us the Kansas City game, Devin Singletary is an adequate back, but elevating that position is an important thing for this team potentially moving forward. And it's more than just about being enough. It's about seeing what they could do going forward.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about it, at the top. Like, he's good enough, as it was stated there, but they need more from that position, and they really don't have anything in the pipeline. So I could see them taking one this year, and we're going to cover a bunch of guys in different rounds that may be targets for them in this draft.
Oh, now we move on to a guy who I like a lot. I like Breece Hall. I think that's very fair. But Kenneth Walker III, KW3, a lot of fun ways you can do Kenneth Skywalker III. There's a lot of fun things you can do with this guy's name. It's really fun. He's somebody who just really, I love that you let off early with like pass protection stuff from him, because this is an area that like I'm a little concerned about of like everything because of his strengths in other areas. But this first clip like is really nice. Like you can see his eyes. He's scanning to the right and he comes back in, and just the leverage, the chip, that oomph to just completely upend the blitzing backer there is so beautiful. And then the second one when he undercuts him on that A-gap blitz is beautiful. But Kenneth Walker, for me, He's up there. I have a second round grade on Breece Hall. He and Kenneth Walker are two of my top 3 running backs. And Kenneth Walker, 5'10", 210 pounds, a 4.3 840. He's got long speed that shows on tape. He's also got short area burst. He's got solid awareness and vision. Oh, that was beautiful right there. I know the comp, Erik, we joked about this in the DMs. The comp apparently for him from some people is LaDainian Tomlinson. I don't know if they see that level.
Player profiler had him as LT.
That's wild. Like I like Kenneth Walker. I'm not going to comp him to a Hall of Fame running back and arguably the most dynamic running back of his generation. But what's nice with him is he possesses. Oh, awesome comment there. Let's get some more likes. 160 in the chat. If everybody could drop a like, that's tremendous. It helps us to track and trend in front of more eyes and ears. Really affects the algorithms. What's nice and I like about Kenneth Walker, in addition to the speed and the burst and the physicality and all that, again, it's some of the schematic things from him. In his career, 289 zone runs versus 188 gap, 2021, 177 zone versus 84 gap. You really saw in 2021 his ability to press the line of scrimmage in those zone runs and find his alley, find that hole. And then once he sees it, he diagnoses it. He's able to put that foot in the ground and get upfield. And he's got, again, I mentioned the 40 time, which is all nice and fine and dandy for times, but it's nice to see it show up in games. You see the real game speed. You see him burst from 5 to 10 yards and get through a hole and be the hammer and make the defender the nail. Or you see him on these home run hitting touchdowns really be able to impact the game. That one that you just showed there, Erik, is a nice one because it highlights his, he gets stuck inside and sees there and is like, okay, I can't get through. I can't find the hole, but he sits, he's patient. He's able to bounce back outside with his vision and then bury it and put it away. There's a lot of things to like with Kenneth Walker as we start to, move into this topic. Kendall, I know he's a guy that you've had your eye on as well. What are some things that, catch your eye when you're studying tape of Kenneth Walker?
Well, firstly, the LT comp, I have to address that.
Completely
My comp for him is Javonte Williams with more juice. I think he runs in a very similar way because he's always like finding contact. As much as he's, showing this wiggle and ability to avoid contact, he's not afraid of it. And he, more times than not, I feel like he's seeking it out and he shows that physical style to his game. And it shows a lot. I think I heard a clip of him somewhere talking about how like Michigan State coaches didn't allow him to run out of bounds. And you can see that kind of mentality where he's like, oh, the out of bounds right here. Now I'm just going to run through this guy and like churn out 3 more yards. I just love the style of football that he plays. And I remember the first few games that I watched of him, I was like, I kind of question his vision. He seems to be running into his blockers a lot. And then the more I watched, I was like, I think this offensive line is just trash and he's just making do with what he can. And the more I watched, the more I saw that. And this is a huge clip right there because I think that's something that a lot of people are questioning with Kenneth Walker. What's his passing game impact? Can he pass protect and can he catch the ball out of the backfield? Because he wasn't asked to do it a lot in terms of catching the ball out of the backfield. But just because he hasn't done it a lot doesn't mean he can't, because everything in terms of his athletic profile tells you that he'll be great in space and he'll make people miss or he'll run through you and get those extra yards. But how confident is he with his hands? Is he a confident hands catcher? Does he have to body catch? Can he transition from pass catcher back into runner quickly? All that kind of stuff. That stuff definitely needs to be answered at the next level. But I have tons of confidence in his game. Similar to you, I have a round 2 grade on this guy, but I really like the full body of work that his tape presents. It's very well-rounded. There aren't clear holes in his game. There's just questions that need to be answered at the next level.
Oh, that's a really good way to put it. Erik, same thing to you. Kenneth Walker, thoughts, likes, dislikes, all that fun stuff when it comes to the tape.
Yeah, second round grade, same as you guys. And I think if we look at some of the recent drafts, in the last 5 years, I think that you'll see that's where, running backs, the Javonte Williamses of the world, you get those kind of running backs in the second round. A guy like Kenneth Walker, he's going to be very productive for your offense. I think he is a scheme fit. We're talking about the Bills offense and what we're expecting from a zone run game perspective. You see a lot of outside zone runs in his game, more so from pistol than what the Bills typically do, as you see right there. But this is more of a, a duo type run with a wide receiver coming across the formation. But they run it from pistol. They do run it from under center as well. But I think he fits the type of concepts and brand of football that McDermott, Ken Dorsey, and those guys want on offense. But I want to go back to, the clip at Wake Forest on this play right here, because it's something that I think is the basis for his game. So Wake Forest in 2020, remember, the Bills scouted Carlos Basham, drafted Carlos Basham when Walker was there. So now you have, Walker right here on this extended mesh, and it's weird. So they would, do the mesh right here between the quarterback and the running back here, press the line of scrimmage, slowly walk to the line of scrimmage, allow Walker to diagnose and survey the defense, but more importantly, get all these guys downhill into the run gaps, right, guys? Get all these guys into the line of scrimmage, onto their blocks, so that Walker can diagnose and then, boom, burst, acceleration, out wide. That is the key to his game, in my opinion. Whether it's on downhill concepts, whether it's, catching a check down underneath, he can run away from guys with his burst and acceleration.
Yeah.
And you see it all over his film. You're going to see it in some of the clips that Anthony breaks down here in a second. And I think it all comes back to his time at Wake Forest and that extended mesh. And Michigan State took that philosophy and just kind of turned it into their style of offense with Mel Tucker. You saw a lot of those counter action plays that are slow developing. You saw some of these wide zone runs and allowed him to press the line of scrimmage out wide, cut it back up inside like you saw there. So they took that philosophy and that style of running back that Kenneth Walker is, and they just applied it to their offense. And, he was super productive, pretty much led in every, stat when you talk about running the ball last year. But the most important thing is he did all of that. And for the most part, he was quite durable, right, guys? So that is one of the most important traits for a running back. And I mean, some of the stuff that we're going to see on film here that Anthony breaks down is just fun to watch. And I think, again, top down, he is the best fit for the Bills offense. A guy that led in, as I said, some of those important stats, those missed tackles, force, and all that, just like Zach Moss and Devin Singletary.
Yeah, it's funny. It's like we share a brain. I've got some of those stats right here. So he, in 2021, Kenneth Walker had 1,168 yards after contact, which led the NCAA. What's fun is, so again, 1,168. Devin Singletary's last year in college, he had 1,027 yards after contact. Zach Moss, 1,042. Kenneth Walker, also in 2021, 89 missed tackles forced, which was second in all of Division I college football. Again, to compare some numbers. So 89 missed tackles for Kenneth Walker in 2021. Devin Singletary's final year, 96. Zach Moss's final year in college, 89. So very similar in terms of those yards after contact and missed tackles forced. And then another nice piece for Kenneth Walker in 2021. He was tied for second in runs of 10 plus yards. He was a guy who just ate. Oh, we got a timeout. You know why? Because we got a super chat. You guys know the rules. Oh, this is the fun one. Thank you very much for the super chat and the donation. Erik, awesome job pausing the tape. But this is a fun question that we all should answer. Kendall, I'll start with you. The question is, can you guys tell me individually what would be your dream realistic first two picks in the draft? This is a really fun question. It takes us off topic for a brief second, but we have to answer it because you know the rules.
I'll try to go quick. Realistic, I don't know if Andrew Booth is realistic at 25, but I watched his tape and I'm really on the edge about it because he hasn't done any testing or anything like that. So I don't know if front offices are going to be scared off by that, but I think his tape suggests he'll be taken before 25. So I guess my dream is Booth falling to 25, but otherwise I'll say Kyler Gordon, and then following that up with a running back, Breece Hall, Isaiah Spiller, Kenneth Walker, whoever it is. I could care less at that point as long as it's one of those three. And then that sets you up to take a wide receiver in the third round. So that's my dream scenario. It's Booth or Gordon at 25, and then one of these top three running backs at 57.
Nice. Same view.
Yeah, I mean, I'm kind of along those lines as well. I'd say, wide receiver because of, the position right now. I'd say any of the wide receivers at the end of the first round, and then flip it with a cornerback or running back, whatever one's best player available. I'm not really stuck, on one guy or the other, but you want the best guys at the position. And obviously the wide receiver class is super deep, but in that first round, if you can get one of the top tier guys,
Mhm.
I think, again, adding it to this offense, it can definitely pay off in the long run. But yeah, wide receiver, cornerback, I love between Booth and Gordon. I think Gordon is just ahead of Booth for me, but I love the competitiveness, the physicality,
Mm,
the dog and alpha mentality of Booth. That is one thing that stands out with him.
Yeah.
But that that also is the reason why he misses a lot of tackles and is out of
Yep.
control.
Yep.
But again, you're not going to really, it's kind of like the Matt Milano thing. Like the dude makes a ton of disruptive plays,
mm,
but every once in a while he's gonna blow a coverage, or he's going to miss a tackle in the open field. You got to take the good with the bad. And I think Booth
Mhm.
has a lot of good stuff on film, and he definitely has that dog mentality that the Bills may need, especially the first half of the season when it
mm.
comes to Trey White's injury. You want to have a guy that, for most of the season last year wasn't really targeted all that often because he's that kind of player. So I do like the Booth pick, but I do think Gordon is a better fit schematically.
Mm.
So wide
That's fair.
receiver, cornerback, I think in the first 2 rounds, you can flip them. Just give me the best players available.
Dream realistic for me, an all-pro taken in the first round and an all-pro in the second. High five. No, I'm very similar boat. Give me right now. I'm still banging the drum for a corner in round one. Give me McDuffie or Booth or Kyler Gordon, or I'm still loving Roger McCreary, but I would love one of those corners realistically falling to the Bills at 25. But again, to stay realistic, I could also be tempted if Chris Olave is there, if somehow Garrett Wilson falls, which I don't believe he does. Even Jameson Williams, who I'm not tremendously high on, but I like his fit because of his speed and the potential he offers. And then same, whichever we don't do, I'm flipping. So if the Bills get a corner in round one, give me a receiver in round two, or if Breece Hall is there, Kenneth Walker's there, I got no problem taking him in round two. Why? Because I think the depth for receiver in round three is potentially there. I like the receivers that exist in round 2 and 3, so I'm fine getting any one of them on day one or day two. Really good thought-provoking question.
Mhm.
And speaking of thought-provoking things, Kenneth Walker is a guy, as we switch back to the film, who processes very well, has great vision. That really wasn't a good segue for thought provoking, but whatever. But look at, oh, beautiful. You drew the arrow. So this run is designed to go to the right here. We see Walker start to bend it, and we see him as he gets the ball. This one is beautiful because it highlights that vision. The front side is muddied and murky at best. And the lane that he's supposed to go to, boom, you got him highlighted right there. 68 is turning into that gap. He looks to the left. There's another guy in that gap to his guard. There's nobody there. There are guys there. There's no hole there. He's got a man who's looping in on that left side. So all the interior gaps where this run is designed to go are no longer there. But what does Kenneth Walker do? He peels his head and his eyes to the back side of this play, sees that defensive end who's getting pushed out inside, and he quickly just gets upfield and he bursts forward. And then this is my favorite part. The corner has outside leverage on him on this play, but Walker takes it straight up field, and then you have a perfect freeze frame like you started to show there. He just plants that right leg in the ground, turns this corner around, and then gets up the sideline. It's a really, really smooth cut. It's a decisive cut, almost like the cut you would see from a receiver running a route in that way that it's sharp and it's crisp and it's got pop to it. It's something that showcases on this play the speed that he can operate with and the vision that he has. Because I don't think his vision gets talked about enough. A lot of it is just the physical game that he brings. This one is tied to something I talked about earlier when it comes to Kenneth Walker's ability to press the line of scrimmage on a zone run and then be able to get upfield. So you see the outside zone here, gets the ball, he's stretching, he's kind of looking, he's trying to see, okay, where can I pick my spot? He's already seeing it. He's seeing his man get to 32 for Michigan, and it's just a matter of what that tight end does to 32. He pushes him outside. Walker plants his foot in the ground. And then that's the difference that this Bills offense could use. That's part of the scheme fit we talk about with Kenneth Walker. It's that long speed and that little move. I love that move where he shakes the safety because the safety has an angle on him.
Mhm.
He's got the angle, but he comes up too much. And this is what we talk about again. It's something, Erik, you and I talked about it last year in the film room when we talked about Travis Etienne, ironically, who also wore number 9 as a running back. the running back's ability to change defenders' angles. That safety for Michigan should have Kenneth Walker. Walker's speed and his burst, in addition to his awareness to be able to see the angle and then elude that diving tackle, that's something that separates him from other running backs in this class. And that's part of that scheme fit that when we talk about that we'd like to see in this offense, the Bills don't have a guy that can do that. I still like Devin Singletary. He does not have that level of burst and that level of long speed when it comes to separating like that. And then this last one here against Maryland, just making so many defenders look silly. Like, again, we talked about it with Breece Hall where he was dead to rights in the hole. Kenneth Walker should kind of be dead to rights here on multiple times. Like at the line of scrimmage, there's nowhere to go. He kind of misses that hole to the right. He tries to get back to it late to the, right on the inside hip of 75. But as he goes to go back to it, the defender goes into that gap. So he doesn't have anywhere to go. So he's like, uh-oh, what do I do? This defender, this edge defender has him. He pops it back outside, gets horizontal, stiff arms his man, shakes free. His ability to run through arm tackles and grabs is a real strong strength of his. And then again, he's surrounded. Gets past Nick Cross, a safety that a lot of Bills fans are starting to enjoy as of late. Shakes his man, gets upfield again, the ability to separate. And then Kendall, here's your point there, right? He does at Michigan State. He doesn't go out of bounds easy. He doesn't go out of bounds soft. Even here, as he's getting kind of horse-collared and like hog-tied, he's still trying to fight to stay upright and get upfield. There's no quit in him. He runs hard. Everything other than that receiving piece, right? In Kendall, I think it was very legit. For his career, he's only got 18 catches for 129 yards. So a far cry from the receiver production that Breece Hall had. And you add it up with some potential questions in pass protection. That's really where a lot of it stems from for me when it comes to my grade for Kenneth Walker with that second round grade. But if you're looking at him from a running back perspective and everything he can do with the ball in his hands, he's a quality back. He's got everything you're looking for once he's got the ball in his hands. The burst, the pop, the vision, the power for the Bills, the scheme fit, everything. There's a lot to like with Kenneth Walker and a reason that he was a stud all year. And now we move on to another potential stud, someone who, Kendall, you've had your eye on for a majority of this offseason, Mr. Rachaad White out of Arizona State.
Yeah, I really like his game, and specifically the amount of zone running that he's used in was calling me to him, especially after the Cromer hire and all of our assumptions that we'll be moving on to more predominantly zone running schemes. And I mean, how much we saw the Bills try and use that outside zone running, but how it doesn't work if you don't have a guy with the juice to really threaten the edge. Like, what's the point of having an outside zone scheme if no one's actually going to threaten the outside tackle?
Are you saying in order to do good outside zone runs, it would be nice if you had a running back who is good at outside zone runs?
Yes. That's basically the crux of what I'm getting at here. Yeah. So, Rachaad White was big with that. He had 61% zone runs in his career and 38 gap runs. He can do both. I felt like he had really good vision for both. But he was clearly more comfortable in zone just because it was what they were doing more and he had to get comfortable with it. But despite being a higher cut runner, he's 6 foot tall, 214 pounds. He actually has pretty good contact balance, which is shown on this play here. Ironically, he just refuses to go down. And, someone who usually is that tall, it's typically easier to knock them over, the lack of low center of gravity kind of stuff. But he doesn't go down easy. He's tough to tackle. You can see that competitive toughness in the way he runs. He's always fighting for extra yards. And I think that's a huge part to being a running back. You got to churn out those extra yards where you can find them, but also the long speed. The fact that he found the end zone on that last play was nuts to me because that wasn't even his top speed. Like, he looked gassed on that last play and he still found the end zone. So the long speed is there. The 40 time should tell you that the long speed was there. But another reason why I think he's a great fit and a compliment is this pass catching. He's very confident as a pass catcher, really soft hands. You can see him go after this off frame catch. And then he just loves this hurdle move. I don't know what it is about him, but he just loves the hurdle move. And what's better than one offensive player who loves to hurdle? Get two. And Rachaad White would be a second. So that would be awesome to add that. The long speed, the athleticism, just the balance of his overall game is really encouraging, especially for a guy that seems to be mocked around rounds 3 to 4. I have a round 3 grade on him, and I think that's even then is a pretty good value on a guy who shows he can make people miss in the backfield, not like crazy elusiveness, but he can show some wiggle every now and again. He has some good jump cuts, good vision to find the hole, and then the long speed to go and take it to the house, show that breakaway potential, that playmaking potential. I think that's a huge part to his game that obviously the Bills are missing. The one area that I personally critique is his pass blocking. I mean, it's kind of a trend with all of these guys. I mean, they're rookies. It's tough to find a perfectly well-rounded running back that can also pass block, but he's somewhere in between that area of mediocre to sufficient. I don't doubt that he can get better, but right now he's kind of in a position where he just throws himself at defenders. He doesn't seem so confident in his power at the point of attack. He just kind of throws his body at whoever's blitzing, and I don't really love that. He can scan pretty well and find where he needs to be, but what he does at the point of attack is what's most concerning to me. When you see that he has more than sufficient power in the run game and toughness in the run game, that should be able to transition and translate to pass blocking, but for some reason there's not a connection there, and there's just a slight lack of confidence in that area. So that's my one concern for him, really. But he's really well-rounded running back. Obviously, he's scaled down from the two guys we've just talked about, but I still like the value, especially in round 3.
Oh, that's a huge part, right? As we continue to talk in this episode, it's all about the value. It's all about where you can get guys. Erik, as we pivot to you now, what are your thoughts on Rachaad White in terms of his skill set and then grade that you have for him and potential value?
Yeah, I'll start with my grade on him. I have him as a 3rd round grade as well. And I'm not big on comps. I know I've used them in this episode because with running backs, when you're talking comps, you use it to kind of explain and paint the picture about a player's style of play. Not necessarily all the traits that encompass the player, but what they look like, what they feel like when you're watching their film. And when I watch Rachaad White, and you can see it on this play, Kendall talked about he's tall, he's lean, but even for his running style, he has really good lean for being a tall guy. But these little cuts right here on these zone runs and the way he runs, just like his stride, is very Arian Foster like. This is
damn nice comp.
He's got that size. He's a little lighter, but the way how smooth he is on these cuts, like look at how he stacks 3 jump cuts right there.
Yeah.
And he's doing it to cut back against the grain, against the pursuit, but also he's gaining ground vertically. So he's getting up the field on jump cuts, making these guys miss. And next thing you know, he's got 8 to 10 yards on a run. Like this little prancing deer type jump cuts, like it's just so smooth. He just glides. And I just felt like I was watching Arian Foster, and I would love to see that in a zone run, an outside zone run game in Buffalo, if that, was brought to Buffalo. So that's the type of style and runner I think he is. He is always accelerating through contact, and he's very decisive, which when you're talking discipline in the zone run game, like that's what your coaches want. Those, take those 3 steps towards your aiming point, then get downhill. And Rachaad White shows that he could do both of those things. And when he does see contact coming, he can accelerate through it.
Yeah, that acceleration piece is a big one for me. We're across the board in terms of our grade. I have a 3rd round grade on Mr. Rachaad White as well. But what I like about him is that complementary piece, Kendall, that you alluded to earlier. He's got home run ability. He's got run after the catch ability. When he gets the ball in his hands in the passing game, you see that short area burst. You see that long speed, again, that goes with that home run threat ability. But my favorite thing for him, and you mentioned that Arian Foster comp, I love the footwork here. Like, look at how he gets that bend in that cut, and then he makes 2. He gets 1 to get upfield into this hole, and then Erik, you drew on, he sees that looping defender coming around to fill that gap to the right. Exactly. That defender's starting to fill, and in the blink of an eye, the vision and the physical ability to pop again, boom, cuts, and he gets through that hole and adjusts again. The ability to plant and make defenders miss in the hole, that's where a majority of the work is going to come from in the NFL. Your ability to make guys miss in the hole. This isn't college where the hash marks are spread out farther, so you can get the ball on the outside and you've got like 15 yards of room and space to work with. You got to make guys miss in a phone booth. Rachaad White has that ability, and especially given the fact that, like you mentioned, he's 6 feet, 214 pounds. He's a little bit on the bigger side or the more high cut side, but his lower body functions like a smaller back. He's got that bend, he's got that explosivity and the footwork to match. He's a guy who I've targeted all along in those round 3 to 4 areas. I was hoping round 4 earlier, but with the tape and things you see, he's really starting to pop up and climb up boards into that round 3 area. And now we have another guy who, Kendall, you mentioned a lot this offseason and who's been linked to the Bills by a couple people, Mr. Max Borghi out of Washington State.
Yeah, Max Borghi's an interesting one. He's been at Washington State for, I believe like 4 years now.
I was going to say 7 years.
Forever.
It's kind of wild. Like, I don't know what it is about him, and it's probably, I don't know what it is, but I see so much like just watered down Christian McCaffrey when I watch him. It's probably the number and just the overall like size and the play style and all that stuff. But he's not Christian McCaffrey. I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to comp him.
They're the same. So basically, so what we got in some of these comps we've got so far, we've got LaDainian Tomlinson, and then we've got Christian McCaffrey. Awesome comps that we got rolling.
No, I actually really struggle with a comp for him because he's very unique, but like play style wise, he's very similar in what he brings to the table as Christian McCaffrey. Okay, that's a good one. Okay, I like that. I think he's a little bit. No, that's fair. I was going to say he's a little bit more functional of a runner, but Danny Woodhead was a
my comp for
Woodhead,
my comp for Borghi is Walter Payton, and I think it's spot on.
Just that little pitter patter style, smaller running back, gets lost behind the line of scrimmage, and then just obviously has the dual threat game running and as a receiver. So he just reminds me of Woodhead, just that pitter patter style. And he's quick, right? He's got that short area quickness.
The pitter patter is actually a really good point because he does take a lot of steps, and I don't know what it is about him, but he takes a ton of steps, and you can see that burst. Like he's always running away from people in like that quick, like 5 to 10 yard area. But he also shows some of that contact balance. He's 5'9", like 207, something like that. So he's very low center of gravity oriented. He's tough to tackle for that reason. He doesn't offer you a ton of power or anything like that, but he also has this breakaway speed ability. I'm pretty sure his pro day just happened yesterday, and he ran, I will check it right now, I think it was a 4.51 unofficially. So nothing like, oh, wow, this dude's a burner. But he can run away from people, and you can see it here. Exactly. So the biggest concern I have with him is his limitation when it comes to running in between the tackles. And obviously, you're not going to bring this guy into Buffalo to do that. That's not what you're doing with this. You're bringing him in, if you're content with your running back room, but you want someone to push Duke Johnson, you draft Max Borghi late, because I think that's exactly what he does. He would push Duke Johnson for that role. And he would be outstanding on outside zone runs. He loves to bounce it outside and he loves to cut it back, but he doesn't have the confidence to go up the gut and find the vision through the middle. He's always looking to bounce it outside, and he has the speed to threaten those edges and destroy pursuit angles. So I don't blame him for doing that, but he's just got some stiffness to his game, doesn't show like a ton of wiggle. You can see there's just not a lot of fluidity there, and that like choppiness, that pitter patter that you're talking about. I mean, it doesn't show itself as like great footwork or anything like that, but he's always underneath himself. He's always playing very balanced because his feet are just always under himself, and he's got that low center of gravity. So he's a very interesting guy to bring in as a late round running back, but he offers a very palatable skill set for what the Bills are looking for seemingly this offseason with the JD McKissick miss and then the Duke Johnson signing. And then I think this guy just fits the mold in that regard.
Yeah, my comp for him, and I don't even mean this as a joke, his running style makes me think of Stewie Griffin. When he runs, I just hear like
it's got to have the sound effects. Yeah.
Every step he does, like that's just what I see. That little pitter patter. There you go. You see him right now.
Yep.
I think for me, this type of description that I'm about to use used to be kind of like disrespectful to running backs when you would call them like kind of that jitterbug or that scat back type of thing. But in today's NFL, that's a very real role. That's a very viable piece. James White has been living off of it for years in New England. And that's what I envision Max Borghi as in the NFL, but I think he gives you a little more between the tackles capability than your traditional scat back like a James White, because he is a little thicker and has a bit more in terms of his like shoulder broadness to handle the rock in between the tackles, combined with his zone running ability. Kendall, you did a great job putting in the notes his receiving stats in his 4 years. So 4 years, 179 targets, 155 receptions, which is a reception rate of 86.6% for 1,128 yards, 7.3 yards per catch, and 9 touchdowns. Like what's something that we've been talking about all offseason, guys, like the complimentary piece. This is a non-sexy complimentary piece, but like was mentioned, fits into that mold. Who have the Bills been trying to bring in? They tried to get J.D. McKissick. Max Borghi is into that mold, into that realm of that scat back receiving threat running back out of the ability who offers you some functionality in the run game, but someone whose skill set, again, isn't a number one true take over and be the future of the running back room, but it's a complementary piece to go along with what the Bills have now and a dynamic weapon the Bills don't currently have. Erik, is that kind of the same lines that you see Borghi, or is there anything else that you see different?
No, you guys nailed it. When it comes to running inside, he's a guy that's going to have to play within the scheme. You're going to have to scheme him up on draws, as you saw in some of these clips. Traps, quick traps inside, get him beyond the line of scrimmage quickly and allow him to get up the field. Obviously, the passing game will be an area that he could exploit, specifically screens, like getting him in the open space on screens, some of those option routes. I mean, the role that, yes, the Bills have been searching for years now, the role that, this offense, the EP offense, rooted in Brian Dable's time with the Patriots, has always had. You mentioned James White, Woodhead, another guy that we mentioned earlier. I mean, those type of guys can exist in this offense, and they have been trying to get that role. They just really haven't found a guy that could do it consistently. And I think Borghi late, whether he gets drafted late or undrafted, he's had ties to the Bills from what I remember seeing online on the internet. So he's definitely a guy that they could add, and a role could be carved out for him, no doubt about it, as we talked about pretty much most of this episode.
And that's the theme overall in this episode. And I think the conversation for a lot of us here at Cover One, when we talk about that running back piece, it's regardless of where you are taking someone or what value you've placed or what round grade you've placed on a running back, the idea that the Bills running back room is set is far from the truth. They have an opportunity to potentially upgrade this position grouping at the top or upgrade a complementary piece to Devin Singletary if he's going to be the starter, which he was down the stretch. His snaps almost doubled per game the last 5 weeks of the year. He was at about 62 snaps per game. He saw pretty much every snap on the field in the playoffs and down the stretch in the regular season. And he's somebody that, as of right now, as of this moment, Devin Singletary is RB1. Erik, you mentioned it earlier. We don't know what the future of Zach Moss holds. Somebody who was RB1 down the stretch in 2020 gets hurt against the Colts, but everybody, Kendall, I know you're in this boat, thought that he'd pick up that RB1 mantle coming into 2021, and it wasn't. It was the hot potato game for the beginning of the year, and then they really passed that ball to Devin Singletary, literally and figuratively, in being the RB1. And now we've got some options that we've laid out in this film room that fit from a schematic perspective, but also fit from a dynamic and a talent skill set piece, right? It's all about upgrading that running back position. And if you go for it early, you get somebody tremendously talented like a Breece Hall, or maybe you wait towards the second round, you get somebody like Kenneth Walker who still has that upgradable option for you, or someone in the middle rounds like a Rachaad White, or late or potentially undrafted like a Max Borghi. It's all about adding another dynamic to the running back group that the Bills do not currently have. And it's all in that giant theme of continuing to give weapons to Josh Allen, to continue to make sure he's got bullets in the chamber and one in the clip so he can continue to fire. You've got one of the best dudes in football, one of the best quarterbacks in football. It's all about continuing to strengthen the arsenal that he operates with. And that's the theme we operated with in this film room. And we appreciate everybody for riding with us live on this film room. We've got 157 live in here now. I really hope that's how many likes we have at a minimum going on right now. They go a long way towards helping us to track and trend in front of more eyes and ears and all that stuff. Algorithms are tremendously important to us, as are rates and reviews and subscription. Please subscribe to Disguise Coverage. Please drop us a like, drop us a review, drop us a rating, all that kind of stuff. Erik, if I had to rate you, I'd give you a thumbs up because you're fantastic. And you've been doing a lot of stuff. Yeah, you deserve that. But you've been doing a lot of stuff since you came back from the old Disney World these last couple of weeks. What do you have on the horizon for us coming up?
I mean, I just did a quick film breakdown on Ryan Bates. Obviously, the Bills brought him back, matched the offer for the Bears, so I dropped that on the YouTube channel. I have a couple things in the queue. I have a Gregory Rousseau video started. We're gonna be doing some more positions for the film room. So I got a couple things in the arsenal. I'm not gonna release too much of it right now.
Ooh, sneaky.
Yeah, just because I'm not sure when they're gonna drop, so I'm just cutting up film here and there on top of cutting up film for the film room. But no, this was a fun episode. I know probably not the greatest topic because a lot of people feel, and we saw it in the chat tonight, a lot of people feel that
Very
the backs
decisive.
are good enough, and they are. We said that all night. The backs are good enough, but we want a little more. I mean, we want a little more for Josh Allen to help Josh Allen, as Kendall said. 85% of the offense. I mean, come on, guys. Like, we want him to be that beast. He is the beast. He is that identity, as we always talked about in the film room last year. But you need to add guys around him, and not just at wide receiver position, at running back, add another tight end. So give Josh some more weapons. Running back is an area that they could do that in this draft, and I think they will, based on all of the holes that they have filled, and Bean loves to do that, right, guys? Like, fill those holes. There's no obvious needs on this roster, and that's when you're going to see some of these positions that may surprise us: linebacker, running back, tight end. Those are positions that, again, the future is a question mark. We're talking about contracts and the cap space that they have, that Bean has to operate with over the next few years. So something to keep an eye on going into this draft.
Especially from a GM and Brandon Bean, who at this point, I think has proven that as much as we want to predict and track and trend what he does, he's kind of unpredictable. The Stephon Diggs trade, the Von Miller signing, the double dipping last year of edge in first and the second round, he could go anywhere. Nothing would surprise. I think unless the Bills went quarterback in the first round, I don't think any move surprises anyone.
Yeah, it's true.
Yeah, right? Like, Bills trade up and take Malik Willis and then put him at running back. Like, there's not a lot that could surprise us at this point with what Bean does. And we know Bean and McDermott are very like-minded in how they operate and how they move forward, knowing that they are never satisfied at any position. They are never holistically set at any one thing on this team. They're always looking to improve. They're always looking to kick the tires. And when you have that, you have to expect the unexpected, which is a great way to operate considering the moves that Bean has made in his tenure as Bills GM. Kendall, your tenure here on the film room has been fantastic. And why don't you let the people know where they can find you this week? You're welcome. I'm lying and making it up. But why don't you tell us where people can find you, what you got going on, and all that good stuff?
All right. You can find me on Twitter at Mursky Kendall. I haven't been dropping a lot of film stuff on Twitter because I've been trying to get through interior offensive linemen, and I won't lie to you, it's not sexy. I'm at the bottom end of the list. So I'm not trying to put out a lot of film. I'm kind of just trying to get through the position group so I can get on to something else. So I'll post some film on Twitter soon enough. I just got to get through the position group. But I will be on the Air Raid Hour breaking down interior offensive linemen in 2 days on Thursday night. So that's what's next from me. I don't know what position is next for me in terms of scouting. I'm probably going to go back to cornerback. I mean, we know the Bills are going to draft one.
They better.
Honestly, at this point, they may draft two. So I got to do more work in that area. I really only have like the first 5 guys scouted and, a handful beyond that. So I definitely will be getting some cornerback tape up on Twitter probably after Thursday's show on the Air Raid Hour, though, because I gotta finish up those interior offensive linemen.
Have fun going down that rabbit hole. It's not sexy, but they are.
It hasn't been fun.
No. And we honestly, if again with the best player available model that the Bills have used, there's a chance that best player available, maybe in the first 3 rounds, could be a guard. Maybe Ryan Bates's depth, and we don't know how they want to move when it comes to guard. Maybe there's somebody that Cromer has earmarked.
We don't know what's going on.
One-year deal.
after Saffold. So we don't know how much they're going to invest into that position in the draft. I mean, it's really just Saffold and Bates for this year. And what do we think about Cody Ford?
Excellent point. You guys stole the words right out of my mouth. And this has been a very fun episode. I am Anthony Prohaska. Find me on Twitter at pro__ant. That's pro, 2 underscores ANT. Please join me live tomorrow night, Wednesday, March 30th, live at 7 p.m. Eastern. I will be having Mr. Russell Brown back, and we will be going over this running back class in depth for the 2022 NFL draft. I know a lot of you guys in the chat had questions about Jerome Ford. You guys had questions about Isaiah Spiller. Some of you guys had questions about Pierre Strong. We're going to be touching on everybody tomorrow. We're also going to be touching on what value is in the first round, how running back fits it, all that kind of stuff. Russ is one of the best in the business. So I'm very excited to have a draft expert of his caliber back on Disguise coverage. So join me live tomorrow, 7 p.m. Eastern. This has been another episode of the Cover One Film Room. We really appreciate all the guys and girls, everybody who rode with us live in tonight's episode. If you're watching later, listening later, whatever have you, thank you very much for your listen, your download, your like, your kind words, your super chat donations, anything and everything. We appreciate all of it. It's our lifeblood. It's what keeps us going. We appreciate you guys so much, and we hope you and your family and friends and loved ones all do well and are staying safe. We will see you next week for another episode of the Cover One Film Room. Christian Wade is RB1. And as always, go Bills. We'll see you next week.